Welcome to the British-Yemeni Society conference done with the London Middle East Institute at SOAS. We first conceived the idea of this conference about 2 years ago, but postponed it several times because of the uncertainty of the situation in Yemen. But the signing of the GCC deal and the international support for transition has given hope for a better future, and we hope this conference will make a contribution to shaping that future, or to helping Yemen to shape that future. The fact that so much interest has been shown suggests we got the timing right. Something like 270 people have registered, and we've had to turn away up to 150 people. So there was a huge demand for this conference. This is the most ambitious project we've ever undertaken, and I'm delighted at the response and easy collaboration that has been with the London Middle East Institute at SOAS, which has done most of the basic organisation. The Society has a desk in the area with details of how to join if anyone is interested. This is an academic conference based on a call for papers issued at the beginning of this year. Well over 60 papers were submitted, and we selected those that addressed the key issues and were of high quality. The academic panel of Gabriel von Brock, Sheila Weir, and Helen Lackner drew up the programme, and it was only at that stage that we approached sponsors. I want to thank the sponsors for their generous contribution. The MBA Al-Jaber Foundation, not only for its sponsorship, but for offering simultaneous translation. When we first started this, we didn't think this was something that would be possible. In fact, we had to turn away some papers because it was possible. We're delighted that the MBA Al-Jaber Foundation decided to provide this facility, because I think it will enable more Yemenis to participate. Our other sponsors include the Yemeni-British Friendship Association, and I'm delighted our president, the foreign minister, is here today. And also I'd like to thank the Thabit brothers, who are also very active in that association, for their support. And also Hayal Saeed, NAM Foundation, and Dirham, a member of our committee, for the support. And the FCO, who gave us some help, and Nexon Incorporated from Canada, and Minas Associates. I'd also like to thank members of the British-Yemeni Society for their support, and the constant backing we've had from Abdallah Radi, the ambassador for Yemen, and Nicholas Hopton, the UK ambassador in Sana'a. I say a week ago we thought we'd have 150 registrations, and the numbers will put, I think, a considerable load on the SOAS facilities. So I ask for your patience and understanding in sort of moving from panel to panel and over things like coffee and lunch. I'd like to stress again, this is an academic conference. It's not a political conference. We're dealing with some very important issues that do create strong opinions and feelings. We ask you that you respect that and keep comments and questions succinct and limited to the topics under discussion. We would also request that you switch off mobile phones during the conference sessions and do not record or film proceedings without permission of the panel chair. I regret that Abdul Karim Al-Iriani and Yassin Said Norman had to withdraw earlier this week because of the need to stay in Yemen to finalise the arrangements for the national dialogue. I wish them well in that. Also, Jamal bin Omar, who was due to come, was unable to travel in time to be in London for this conference. But I'm absolutely delighted that we have the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Yemen and the Minister of Planning and International Cooperation with us, who will speak a little later. I think we have assembled an excellent group of scholars, and they, with your help, can throw light on the issues of fundamental importance to Yemen's future. We hope to publish some of the papers in a book. For speakers and chairs, I'd like to ask Thanos Petoris, my co-convener, to stand up so that speakers and the chairs can identify him as he'll be looking at your presentations, and Helen Lackner, who will be making sure the panelists turn up in time for their sessions. But again, thank you very much all for coming, and at this point I'd like to ask Hassan to say a few words.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody here. I'm Hassan Hakimian, the director of the London Middle East Institute here at SOAS, which is hosting and is a co-organizer of this conference, initiated, planned, and masterfully implemented by the British-Yemeni Society. It gives me great pleasure to see such numbers, and at a very opportune moment, events in the Middle East and in the last, especially two and a half years, have brought home the importance of this region. For those of us at SOAS who have an academic career focused on the Middle East, this has never been a surprise, but we feel reinforced in our belief and in our mission about the importance of appropriate understanding of the Middle East at current times. And I think this conference is a fitting tribute to that. In fact, if I may indulge in saying a few words about SOAS and the Middle East Institute, here we have a dedicated institute that was set up in 2002, a point I'll come back to a little bit later for a very good reason. And since then, we have not stopped promoting a wider understanding of the Middle East in all its aspects. Just to give you one example, in September we had a very big conference on Egypt, focused on education, which was extremely well received, and this was in fact delivered in real time in cooperation with Cairo University. It was a multi-site conference. We have another big conference focused on Iran in February, and another very big conference on Middle Eastern art scheduled for July. This is just to give you a taste for those of you who may not know the London Middle East Institute. At SOAS, scholarship on Middle Eastern studies has a long history and very rich roots. We have about 85 academics who specialize, who have expertise covering different areas of the Middle East, all the way from Morocco to Yemen. In the last 2 years, particularly, we have been busy setting up further sub-centered areas focused on particular countries within the Middle East. For instance, the Center for Iran Studies was set up in 2010, and another one, Center for Palestine Studies. And believe it or not, SOAS boasts some 35 academic experts covering Palestine, another similar number covering Iran. So just to re-emphasize, this is an appropriate location for holding a conference on Yemen at an appropriate time. I hope you'll take a moment to look through the literature that comes in the conference pack. There is a magazine that the LMEI, London Middle East Institute, uniquely produces called the Middle East in London. And this is a very good example of the kind of outreach activities we undertake to make sure the Middle East has its place amongst the public. It's not just a narrowly focused academic journal, but one which reflects on current affairs, but also on history, arts, and culture. If I start naming all the organizations and individuals to whom we are indebted for this conference, it will take a long time. So I would just echo my colleague Noel's thanks to everybody who has put a tremendous effort into this, colleagues, friends, students, members of the British-Yemeni Society, sponsors, and so on. And I very much hope that over the next 2 days, starting shortly, you will enjoy this conference, which proves to be a very fantastic opportunity to ask some very pertinent questions about this really important part of the Middle East. And again, welcome, and I hope we'll have an opportunity to interact much further over the next few days. Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask Duncan MP, Minister of International Development, to say a few words. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and my thanks to the British-Yemeni Society and the London Middle East Institute for letting me just say a few words now at the start of your deliberations, and it's a particular pleasure to welcome Yemeni ministers and distinguished businessmen to being here today. Now, as many of you will know already, I've a great deal of personal affection for Yemen and its people, and as the Minister of State for International Development, Yemen is actually a major focus of my job. And I think you can all see that the UK's commitment to helping Yemen has never been higher. The UK is one of the leading international donors to the country, and we're committed to providing life-saving assistance to those in need, and in helping Yemen to address its longer-term development challenges, such as economic growth and the lack of basic services. Now, overcoming these challenges is essential if Yemen's to have a more stable and prosperous future. So I'm pleased to see that your agenda over the next 2 days covers all of the long-term development challenges which Yemen faces. But I'd like to focus just for a couple of minutes on the urgent actions that are needed over the next year if we're to start building a better future for Yemen. Now, just over 12 months remain before the date of the presidential election, which was promised to the Yemeni people by the GCC agreement. So between now and then, a lot of ground will need to be covered. And given the preparations required for the elections, substantial progress needs to be made in the next 6 months if Yemen's leaders are to keep their promise to their people. So key to this is, of course, getting the national dialogue started. Now, the National Unity Government has already made some progress towards establishing this dialogue, but it does remain off schedule, which is seriously undermining confidence in the transition process. So the UK and others will continue to do everything we can to support the government to overcome the remaining challenges and help establish the National Dialogue Conference as quickly as possible. Because the delivery of a successful national dialogue on schedule would be a major signal to the Yemeni people that their leaders are serious about addressing the divisive issues which drive conflict in the country. Secondly, in Riyadh and New York in September, the international community came together in a show of unprecedented support for Yemen. Nearly $8 billion was pledged to support the Yemeni people in this hour of need. Now, this money is ready and waiting to be spent on urgent priorities such as basic services and repairing damaged infrastructure. Again, we are working with the government and other partners to undertake decisive action to present project proposals to donors so that the funds can be unlocked and begin to flow to where they are desperately needed. So we can't afford to have these promised billions sitting around unused. So I think the biggest challenge facing Yemeni ministers, who we are working with very closely and cooperatively, is for them to work with each other and with the relevant Yemeni institutions and alongside international organizations such as the World Bank and development banks and donor governments, so we can get this money moving into constructive projects for the benefit of the country. So 2013, I think, is going to be a very challenging year for Yemen, but I'm confident that Yemen and its leaders will rise to these challenges. So swift progress on the national dialogue and in unlocking donor funds so that they can start to make a difference on the ground is vital for building the confidence of ordinary Yemenis in the transition, which is so fundamental to its success. So I wish you all the very best for your discussions over the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is His Excellency Sheikh Mohamed bin Issa al-Jaber. Sheikh Mohamed is very well known in British education sector and particularly in SOAS. He's been a great friend of SOAS. And when I introduced my institute, the London Middle East Institute, I glossed over very quickly over the fact that in our history, 2002 is a special date because that's when our old Center for Near Middle East Studies was upgraded into an institute, thanks to the generosity of Sheikh Mohamed. Now, his official biography describes him as a self-made Saudi entrepreneur and philanthropist who's successfully built an international business empire. Let me not say anything about his business empire, because the bit that really interests us, and this is why he's here as a keynote speaker, is the friendship, his vision as his philanthropy has shown the education sector in many countries in the world, but particularly in the UK and in SOAS. In 2002, it was thanks to his generosity, as I mentioned, that the London Middle East Institute came into being, and it's ever so gratifying 10 or 11 years on to see some of the visions that we talked about and shared about. And when I say we, I mean Sheikh Mohamed and his philanthropic vision, as well as a group of colleagues here at SOAS, talking about how the Middle East scholarship should be promoted in terms of research, in terms of teaching, in terms of integrating into curriculum, both at undergraduate and postgraduate. And it gives me ever so much pleasure to see 11 years on that the Institute is there. As I said, you are very active, thanks to his support. And it is my pleasure to introduce him as the next keynote speaker and as a very special friend of SOAS, Sheikh Mohamed.
Thank you very much. معالي السيد آلان دانكن وزير الدولة لتطوير العلاقات الدولية، معالي الدكتور أبو بكر القربي وزير الخارجية، معالي الدكتور محمد السعدي وزير التخطيط والتعاون الدولي، الدكتور نويل بريوني رئيس الجمعية البريطانية اليمنية، الزميل حسن حكميان مدير معهد لندن للشرق الأوسط. سيدات والسادة، اسمحوا لي أن أحييكم جميعاً وأن أرحب بكم في هذا الصرح الأكاديمي الذي جمع بين الحكمة والعلم وأسهم في برولة الحوار والتفاهم. سيدات والسادة، نعلم جميعاً أن التحديات التي تواجهها اليمن اليوم بلداً وشعباً هي كثيرة ومتشعبة. نأمل أن يقوم منتداكم هذا بإلقاء الضوء على جوانب أساسية منها يمكن أن تساعد في بلورة رؤية واضحة لطبيعة الهموم والتحديات. وأن يسهم هذا اللقاء في التنبيه إلى المخاطر التي نراها جميعا اليوم ماثلة أمام مسيرة الشعب اليمني، والتي تعرقل تطلعاته وآماله في الحرية والسلام والتقدم. سيدات والسادة، إن هذا الشعب العظيم الذي هو مهد العروبة والتاريخ قد طاف بقاع الأرض وأقام فيها الحضارات وأسهم في تقدمها ورفعتها ورقيها على مر العصور، والذي ناضل طيلة القرن العشرين من أجل الاستقلال والتحرر والانعتاق من كل أشكال الظلم والطغيان. قد توج مسيرته الحضارية آخر القرن المنصرم بقيام وحدته السلمية التي تصدرت نضالات الحركة الوطنية في الشمال والجنوب، في الشرق والغرب، في الداخل وفي المهجر. صحيح إن هذا الإنجاز العظيم قد تعرض للتشويه والتهميش من قبل أشخاص وقوى عجزت عن تبني رؤية استراتيجية متكاملة لا لحاضر اليمن ولا لمستقبله. لكن مسيرة التغيير التي قادها شباب الربيع اليمني وكل القوى الخيرة قد أثبتت إن الحكمة اليمنية قد تغلبت على منطق القوة وأنجزت التغيير بأقل الخسائر الممكنة. ونحن على ثقة اليوم أن الحكمة اليمنية بإعادة الوحدة إلى مسارها الطبيعي بعيداً عن عقلية التهميش والاستئثار والانعزال، كما إن التأكيد على مثل الحرية والديمقراطية، المساواة الفعلية بين أبناء الشعب الواحد، وإقامة نظام الحكم العادل والتبادل السلمي والديمقراطي للسلطة تعد من المثل والمبادئ التي لا يمكن لإنسان هذا العصر أن يعيش بدونها ولا أن يقبل بالتنكر لها أو التحايل عليها. إن غرس جملة هذه المبادئ والقيم لا بد وأن يكون جزءاً أساسياً من ثقافة الأمة، وأن يدخل في صلب البرامج التربوية في المدرسة إلى الجامعة، في المدينة إلى الريف. وانطلاقاً من ذاك، وبعد عامين من العمل والتنسيق مع منظمة اليونسكو لبلورة مشروع شامل يضمن الحيادية والتعامل المباشر بين اليمن واليونسكو بعيداً عن كل أشكال التأثير، ويهدف إلى إعادة تأهيل النظام التربوي ليستجيب لمتطلبات العصر وتحديات المرحلة. أعلن أمامكم اليوم إنه قد تم الانتهاء من وضع اللمسات الأخيرة لهذا المشروع بين منظمة اليونسكو ومؤسسة محمد بن عيسى الجابر الخيرية، وسوف يتم الإعلان عن انطلاقة هذه الاتفاقية خلال الأيام القادمة في مقر المنظمة في باريس. أتمنى الخير لليمن ولمستقبله الزاهر إن شاء الله. أتمنى في الأخير لهذا اللقاء ألهام التوفيق والنجاح، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.